Simply put, is Russ tradable? And if yes, do you believe the Lakers are going to prioritize that this offseason?
Oh, he's tradable, but I think it's different than prior years when he was traded to Washington and when he was traded to the Lakers, where this is a trade where it's basically not a basketball move. It's a financial move, and it's basically the Lakers determining that they are basically just going to cut costs and trade multiple draft picks, and the team that is going to be acquiring him sees him as a salary dump, whether it be in a buyout. And it's not for basketball reasons, as I said, on the court. But of course, he's tradable, but it's not going to be for basketball reasons.
All right, well, we need to bring Zach Lowe into this conversation because I know he did his homework.
He's still doing it, by the way.
And wants to
Zach, you're my favorite.
Skills. All right,
you're my favorite.
Zach. I know that you have not only one, but two trade proposals. So the floor is yours, starting with a Pacers hypothetical for Bobby to react to.
Well, yeah, as Bobby said, teams are not going to trade for Russell Westbrook to play him. They're going to trade him to buy him out. So you got to look for teams with long-term contracts who would take 2 first-round picks from the Lakers because, as Bobby said, anyone's tradable if you attach 2 first-round picks to them. So I looked at Indiana. Let's see. We got Tyrese Halliburton. He's our guy. Now we have Buddy Hield. He's on a long-term deal. Malcolm Brogdon, we just extended him on a long-term deal. Both those guys would fit what the Lakers need, which is shooting, shooting, shooting. Indiana fans probably don't like the idea of this deal because those are good players, but 2 first-round picks is nothing to sneeze at. I'm not sure the Pacers do it, but that's one call I'm making if I'm Rob Pelinka, the Lakers GM or whatever his title is. And the other place I'm looking for, the other obvious spot is Charlotte, where Gordon Hayward, because of injuries and the emergence of other players, just doesn't quite feel like part of the fabric there anymore. No. And you've got to toss another piece in it to make the money work. Maybe it's Kelly Oubre, maybe it's somebody else. And again, the 2 first-round picks, if I'm Charlotte, I say, hey, I can survive without these guys. I get 2 picks. It's like free money. Maybe I do it. Maybe I don't. Again, Charlotte's not pairing in this scenario that I just made up. They're not pairing LaMelo Ball and Russell Westbrook. They're just getting 2 first-round picks, buying out Russ for some portion of his salary, and Russ goes on his merry way from there. It's just a thought. These are just thought exercises that every front office in the Lakers situation is having with the whiteboards and the markers and all that stuff all the time. It's just, as Bobby said, there are just not that many places to look.
Well, Vince Carter and Richard Jefferson, who are to my right and to my left right now, they were nodding a little bit at your Pacers proposal and hard pass at the Charlotte proposal. What do you think, Bobby?
Well, I think for Indiana, it would make sense for the Pacers. I think any rebuilding team makes sense if certainly the Lakers are going to include two unprotected first and 27 and 29, and who knows where that Laker team will be here. And I think, Indiana has already mentioned that Tyrese Halliburton is their point guard of the future, and what does that mean for Malcolm Brogdon? So that makes sense for Indiana. For Charlotte, unless it's going to be a buyout for Russell Westbrook, I want nothing to do with him with LaMelo Ball. I mean, that's plain and simple. I don't want them sharing the backcourt together, but as Zach said, Gordon Hayward has missed 58 games in the last 2 seasons, has not finished a season in his 2 years in Charlotte. And if you can get 2 first-round picks, that's certainly something to consider. But as we said before, this is purely financial and building up your draft assets.
Well, at least you got a thumbs up from Vince Carter halfway through that answer, Bobby. Zach, Bobby, thank you so much. It is certainly going to be an interesting. A few days ago, I said we wouldn't be talking about the Lakers anymore because we're headed to the playoffs and they're not a part of it. But we still have to, just a little bit, because after yesterday's Vogel news, all the compelling exit interviews that followed, we've changed course because that situation, it could literally impact the rest of the league in waves. So take a listen to what Russell Westbrook said when he took to the mic on Monday.
LeBron and AD were very clear with, let Russ be Russ. We heard that a lot.
Yeah, but that wasn't true.
That's what I was going to say. Did you ever,
let's be honest.
Yeah, did you ever feel like, and I guess, and how much of that is just sort of the nature of when you put 3 All-NBA players together? How much of it is fit and challenge from that? How much of it do you think was maybe something else, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, it's a combination of where we are on the floor, positioning, fit and challenge, trial and error, being able to play with on the floor with each other, finding ways to be able to utilize us to the best of our ability. And it's that simple. I just, you know.
Do you ever feel like yourself this season on the court?
Very rarely.
Okay, that was just a snippet of some of the really interesting comments that Russell Westbrook had yesterday, including saying that he wasn't sure what Frank Vogel's problem was with him. Richard, I'm just going to give you the floor. What's your reaction here?
What? I just want to hear it.
Okay.
You're on your soapbox. Go ahead, sir.
Vince brought his tie. Okay, so look, this is the thing. When I listen to Russell talk in that moment, I still see professionalism, and this is why. Because he's not coming out here and blasting Coach Vogel. He's like, I don't know what Coach Vogel's problem was with me. Well, it could have been your shooting percentage in the fourth quarter, but then on his side, it's kind of like, well, Russ is like, well, I wasn't put in the best position. All the people that are saying they want Russ to be Russ, then I need to have the ball in my hands 95% of the time, and I need to be able to run the offense. I need to make some mistakes, but I also need some positive to come with those mistakes. He just wasn't in that position. And everyone knew that. Everyone knew that going into. Russ knew that going into. So the fact that we asked Russ to do something that he had never done in his Hall of Fame career and then criticize him for not being able to do something he's never done in his Hall of Fame career, I think that shows the disarray from the front office. That shows that there was a lot more tension from the team and inside than was shown. And there was a lot of tension there with the coach. And I think that could lead why Frank Vogel was possibly let go, not just because of, all of the things that we've talked about, but because they felt that if there was a chance that Russell was going to be on this roster, Frank Vogel couldn't be that coach for this season.
Well, but one of the things that we heard Adrian Wojnarowski talk about yesterday was how with this particular job, and LA should be attractive, right? But with the dominant other folks having these, being able to be in these coaching meetings and have all this input, was Frank Vogel even really able to use Russ the way that we don't know that. We don't know if he was able to use Russ the way that he wanted to, and that could have probably led to a problem.
I don't think so. And unfortunately, I think he's a scapegoat in this situation sometimes. And that's the thing about being a coach. It's when management puts a team together, they say, hey, go win with this.
Yeah.
And sometimes, my argument with this all the time is when you have a coach, get players that fit that coach's style instead of just putting a team together and saying, hey,
or any of the star player gets players that fit around that.
He's a defensive coach, so get him some defensive players with those stars.
Well, that's how they want to do
it. And that'll help the situation. Sinead, what you think?
Yeah, I agree. And Richard, you're right a lot about the dysfunction and just things going off ever since 2020. I really think when it comes to Russ, the only thing that really made me a little disappointed in his response was more so the fact that, all right, like I couldn't play my brand of basketball. Well, you have been able to play your brand of basketball, whether that was in OKC, in Houston, in the nation's capital, and now to have this idea that coming to Los Angeles, you're smaller than the franchise. The franchise is a championship, organization that has won multiple. And so even the greatest players know that you have to be able to take whatever sacrifices is, because championship comes first. And so that's the difference that I see here. Like, I want to be my best self. Yes, I understand that, Russ. But at the same time, you're playing alongside LeBron James, Anthony Davis. And as a professional, you have to have that self-awareness that, like, all right, maybe I'm not shooting the ball as well as I need to. Yeah, that creates a situation that might not be great for my team. How am I going to help them benefit through that? How am I going to be a spark plug? There's so many different aspects of professionalism, understanding that the team you go to might have you as the priority, as you as the answer, or they won't. In the case of this instance, the Lakers don't have him as a priority, largely because you have LeBron James, you have AD, you have a number of vets, and you're coming in new after a championship 2 or 3 years ago. So I think it was just hard for me to hear that, oh, you didn't make it work. It's, well, this is not the make it work, it's where we make championships.
Just one thing, I think there's guys out there who sometimes don't understand how to make that sacrifice. And it's a learning curve and learning process. They have to go through this
well,
to grow.
Especially if what was required of Russ for the last several years was vastly different than what was
don't tell Russ he's going to have the responsibility of having the ball, and then when it's starting to go south, you put the ball in LeBron's hands. Don't tell him that.
Well, but
and he has to learn to sacrifice.
And this is the other thing. You take Russell's greatest year ever, and it is probably 6th compared to LeBron's greatest year.
That's fine.
So it's like we're going to give the ball to LeBron James with all due respect. You, as a future Hall of Famer, and I played with you against you in your prime. I played with you in your prime. You also made adjustments.
Right.
Eventually, you went to, I'm going to come off the bench. Eventually, I'm going to just be a supportive veteran. We saw it with Carmelo Anthony. And I'm not saying Russ is in that veteran space of coming off the bench, but Russ did not do a very good job of adjusting his game to what the team needs. I think he went into it expecting for the team to adjust around what was his best trait, but that wasn't what was best for the team.
But do you see a path for him to do so going forward?
That's the question.
I think it's hard
Does
because
he know how?
It's hard because you've already opened the present. You can't put it back in, right? Like you see a circumstance where, all right, you gambled or mortgaged a lot of your future based on this decision, and it's going to be out of your hands because isn't it a player option too?
But can he learn this summer?
I think he can.
Can he go through this?
I think he can.
That's the question.
And it's going to take some really difficult conversations amongst LeBron, AD, and Russ to say, hey, if you're not knocking down your three, this is what we need you to do. If you're not, even with the minutes too, you think about, all right, maybe it's not us all going crazy in the beginning. Maybe it's 10 or so minutes you come in, and that's your time to up the pace. There are adjustments that could have been made, but I think pride got in the way of it.
Well, and this is why I ask, right? The Lakers, they have almost $130 million committed to their big three next season. That's assuming Russell Westbrook opts into his player option, which, why wouldn't he? But LeBron is entering the final year of his. They make the play-in. 7 plays 8, and then those games are going down tonight. And then the winner, they become the 7th seed. The loser, they get another chance. They go on to play the winner of the 9-10 game for the 8th and final spot. And the first game on the schedule is Cavs at Nets, and both teams, they talked about what's at stake this morning.
It feels like a playoff game. Each game is just as important, Game 1 through 7 are important, so it feels like a playoff game, and I know our fans are going to approach it as such, and our opponents are as well.
We're fighting for a spot, they're fighting for a spot, so they got the win over us. Want to get one back.
The team that makes the fewest mistakes is typically the team that's going to win. So we've got to do a great job of limiting our mistakes.
It's just a matter of just going up, lacing the sneaks up, and just hooping, seeing what happens at the end.
Everybody's just super eager. Everybody's excited. It's like a revenge game, so take all the marbles.
It is a big day. So once Richard finishes getting his mic on, then we have an amazing panel, starting with half man, half amazing. Look who decided to fly all the way across the country
here with you,
to hang out with us. Yeah, the two of us. Exactly. Then we also have Richard Jefferson and Chiney Agumake in studio, Adrian Wojnarowski, Zach Lowe, Bobby Marks, Nick Friedel. All will be stopping by in just a bit. But I do want to start in Brooklyn. Vince, I want to start with you here. The single most important player in tonight's game is whom?
I think it's simple to me. It's Kevin Durant. And I say Kevin Durant because of his ability to dominate the game, his ability to take over a game, his ability to make plays for everyone else. Who can stop Kevin Durant? I pulled Kevin Durant aside a couple weeks ago. I said, you told people, I'm Kevin Durant? You know what he said. He was in Golden State. Yeah. I was like, hey, well, prove that to these people and get them off your back, and he proceeded to go into Atlanta and score 55. They didn't win, but he could take over the game. But it's the mentality, and I think he's going to need that mentality from start to finish when the game starts for the rest of this.
Yeah, for the rest of the season.
He's going to need that mentality.
What do you think, Rich?
Well, I think Evan Mobley and I think Darius Garland. One, Darius Garland's matchup with Kyrie Irving is going to be huge. And he has the responsibility of not only scoring 20 points, but getting everyone else involved. And the reason why I think Evan Mobley is because what Drummond has done, Claxton, and normally there was a twin tower there. So it was like the Evan Mobley, then there was the Jared Allen. But without both of them there, it all goes on to the potential rookie of the year. And can he step up and be in the paint and dominate the paint? Because that's the one area, in my opinion, that the Nets could be potentially vulnerable in.
Well, and just to be clear here, Jared Allen will not be playing in this play-in game. He is still recovering from that hand injury. Chiney, who is the single most important player to you? And since Richard did a Chiney and pulled two people, you only get one.
To be clear, you always get on me when I'm on the fence. It was player, not player.
My job is to inform the people.
Yeah, that's my job. You're taking a page out of my playbook. My answer for the player in this matchup is a twist off of Vince, and I'm going with Kyrie Irving. Just because I was really enlightened through JJ and his podcast where he talked to KD, and KD said, look, I want to get higher than 55 points per game as one of the greatest shooters. I want to get in the 60 range. I want to get to 65, but guy have to deal with adjustments. And when he's dealing with adjustments, especially in the postseason, when you have players that are talented guarding you, you know that Kyrie can carry that load. We've seen time and time again that he's capable. If the game comes down to a final shot, I mean, we all feel really good about KD or Kyrie, but Kyrie probably in that circumstance really, really wants it. And so when I'm looking at a matchup in the play-in, Kyrie, there's been so much pressure based on what he has meant to this team and what they have had to deal with in the process. And so we all know who KD is. I think it's the Kyrie that has his name circled where, all right, you better show up because we really weathered the storm and you're supposed to be available and you're here and you have to help us get it done.
I do want to bring in senior writer Zach Lowe, host of the Lowe Post, into this conversation. And I called you Mr. Deep Cut on the show last week.
I love that, by the way.
So are you going with a deep cut here? Are you in agreement with the analysts that are on set?
As a general rule, if Kevin Durant is playing in a basketball game, he's the most important player in the basketball game. We can overthink all these things. This guy's an X factor, and what if Karis LeVert has 30 and Evan Mobley's doing this and that? It's Kevin Durant. The guy can win the game by himself. He's maybe the best player in the league, in the world. It's either him or Giannis at this point. Unless Cleveland has an answer for him, and I'm fascinated to see who starts the game on Kevin Durant, frankly. I think everything flows from there. It's KD, and that's it. End of story.
Well, the votes are in, though, and I promised that you would have to bring your homework on Monday. Did KD make your All-NBA team?
Of course he did.
I'm just
All-NBA. I think it's 3 All-NBA teams without Kevin Durant.
I just wanted to double check. All right, let's take a look at the numbers, though, because these teams, they faced each other 4 times this season, with the Nets winning 3 of those. Kevin Durant played in all 3 wins and put up almost 29 points per game. He did not play in the game that the Nets lost. I do want to transition here to more news coming out of Brooklyn this morning. During rush hour traffic, a gunman filled a subway train with smoke, shot multiple people, wounding at least 10, and then fled the scene. That's according to local authorities. And when the train pulled into the 36th Street station in Brooklyn, which is about a half-mile away from the Nets practice facility, authorities said that some commuters, they were left bleeding at the stations while others ran away screaming, and 5 people were in critical condition, but they're expected to survive. At least 16 in all were injured in some way, authorities said. And I just want to put this into perspective in the NBA. That subway stop is the subway stop that many employees who work at the Nets facility, that's what they use to get to work every day. It was my subway stop when I was covering Nets practices. So I do want to go to New York now, where our Nick Friedel covered Nets availability this morning. Nick, thank you so much for joining us. I'm so glad to see you and that you're safe. In the aftermath of this shooting, what was the mood and scene around the Nets facility?
Malika, it was surreal. It was scary. Teammates and coaches were all talking to each other about what they were watching on the screens as the news coverage played out right off the practice floor. And I was able to talk to Kevin Durant and Steve Nash, and they said in their preparation for tonight, this was certainly going to be something that was on their mind.
Absolutely.
It's devastating to hear about, I don't know the details. I don't know too many details, but to hear the sirens out front the practice facility and see so much commotion going on outside, you hope and pray that for the best for everybody involved.
It's obviously a very tragic morning, and we're devastated for the community and for those directly involved. I don't know a lot of the details, so I don't want to get too far into it, but we're just all concerned for everyone involved, and at the same time try to prepare and be focused on our task at hand the best we can.
Malika, as KD said, you could hear the helicopters whizzing by near the practice facility. You could see the cop cars and the ambulances, so it was right in front of everybody's eyes. But having said that, these are professionals, and they understand what is on the line tonight in their basketball game. And as Durant said, we know we have to take care of business, because if they do, they get 4 days off before they would go to Boston and play in Game 1 on Sunday.
Our thoughts, Nick, are certainly with those that are affected, although, frankly, I'm not sure that thoughts are enough. We need to see meaningful, tangible change. Nick, thank you so much. Please keep us posted as the story develops. I was in touch with a league spokesperson, and they told me that they've been in touch with local authorities all day. They're continuing to monitor the situation. But as it's talked about the East, let's move on to the West play-in tournament. The T-Wolves and the Clippers, they will face off, and the winner, they become the 7th seed. So here's how these teams fared this season. LA, they won 3 of 4 matchups. Paul George played in all 3 wins, and the Clippers, they outscored Minnesota by an average of 10 points per game. But you know that it is a big game when Shanae crunches the numbers. What's on the cheat sheet, sis?
Oh, let's get it. It is time to shine because you know what time it is. The regular season is over, and this is my cheat sheet play-in edition. Here's what you need to know about tonight's Clippers-Timberwolves matchup, where the winners are into the playoffs, a.k.a. a series, and get the Grizzlies. Let's start with the youngins, though. You can no longer sleep on the Minnesota Timberwolves and their young core. This season, the T-Wolves, 1, led the league in points per game. 2, they made the most threes per game. And oh, by the way, 3, Karl-Anthony Towns, he was not lying when he said he wants to be the best shooting big man in the game. In fact, he shot 41% from 3 this season, which is the best among centers. So let's take a look at their strengths on the court. Roll me my tape, producer Kwaku, play-in edition, baby. All right, offensively, this is one of the best teams in the league, and they get their offense through great spacing. Simple offense when you have good spacing, a nice pick and roll. Look at how many defenders react, but more importantly, how many shooters are available. And I love this ball movement. You're a great shooter. You don't just shoot the first shot, you shoot the best shot. 41% from 3. Karl-Anthony Towns knocks it down. So great spacing helps in offense. But also when you're young and you're trying to find an identity, having good play calling matters. This is a zone, but they're still committed to running the play, which is man, a pick and roll. And watch this, you're committed, you're still gonna get to your spots, and you create an opportunity again for the big man through the screen. Defense has his back to Cat. Cat is available, it's a zone, you can score here or there, but he goes for the midi and he knocks it down. This is good offense, and that's exactly what the T-Wolves do. Now keep an eye on that guy, Karl-Anthony Towns. I'll explain a little bit more in a little bit, but what's really fun about this matchup is that we've got rising stars versus savvy vets. So let's talk the other side of the ball, the Clippers. This is actually a strength-on-strength matchup. Since Paul George returned 7 games ago, and I know it's a small sample size, but still, the Clippers have had the best offense and best net rating in the entire NBA. So let's see how they are peaking at the right time. Run it back, producer Kwaku, baby, please. Okay, thank you. All right, look at this right here. Paul George, we all know he can play defense. We all know he can get a bucket, especially in the 2 position, but watch him play make. Reading all the defenders and gets the dime out to the shooter. Luke Kennard, I love that guy and his lefty shot. Cross court, knocks it down. So that's the deceptive aspect about Paul George. You might say you need more playmaking. Well, he can actually hold it down. So here's the key takeaway, though. Both of these teams, they can get a bucket, and there are a lot of guys who get it done on the perimeter. You got Paul George, Norm Powell, Reggie Jackson, D'Lo Edwards, you name it. But Karl-Anthony Towns, as I said before, his versatility at the center position makes him a mismatch against the Clippers front line, and that can determine the outcome. Now, we both know Karl-Anthony Towns, he won't be playing around.
Boo.
You know what I mean? Come on. But Vince, I know you have something to say about Paul George, right?
You said Paul George. We talked about Paul George. Well, Paul George's ability to score on his own and get guys involved like we showed. So his ability one-on-one to break down the player. If he feels he has a guy that's too slow, Paul George can get to his jump shot because he can shoot the ball. If he has somebody too small, guess where he goes? To the post and gets to his face. Don't do that. But we haven't played in a while. Hey, and then also his ability, you said it, Shanae, to make plays. Well, Paul George now you see in the pick and roll, he gets there. He does a great job being 6'7" of finding shooters. He has Luke Kennard, he has Norman Powell, and he has a guy who I feel is most improved, Reggie Jackson, on the floor. Also, if Reggie Jackson has the ball, you can put Paul George in the corner.
And space the floor with
Reggie Jackson. To allow Reggie Jackson or Norman Powell to get in the paint and feast as well.
And one reason why this game and this matchup is so intriguing is that the Clippers were basically 7-8 seed all year long without Paul George, without Kawhi Leonard. You add Paul George in there, they're probably closer to a 4 or 5 seed. If you add Kawhi Leonard, they're probably closer to a 1 or 2 seed. So, but I'm saying if you were to add them, them. I'm saying guys on their roster. So, Malika, what you got?
Well, you know, Richard, it wouldn't be a show unless we had Adrian Wojnarowski on to break some news for us. So we are joined now by senior NBA insider Adrian Wojnarowski. Woj, what do you have as it pertains to one of the top coaches in the NBA?
No, that's right, Malika. Monty Williams, I'm told, has been voted the National Basketball Coaches Association's Coach of the Year. He wins that for a second straight time. This is the vote by the league's 30 coaches, and I think this one is extra special for coaches who win it because it's voted on by their peers. And Monty Williams, who has really orchestrated another dominant season for this Phoenix team, franchise record 64 wins, best clutch time team in the league since the 2015-16 Warriors, and a team that had, for a third straight year, this is pretty remarkable, 11 more wins than the previous year. So Monty Williams, the Coaches Association Coach of the Year, and I think the team that everybody heading into the playoffs believes is the favorite to win an NBA title.
Absolutely. Congratulations to Monty Williams. Woj, while we have you, though, I do want to get an update on Luka Doncic. What can you tell us about when he might be back on the court?
Malika, there's a lot of concern about how quickly in this playoff series Luka Doncic will be available against Utah. You know, I'm told if this were the regular season, you wouldn't even be talking about Luka Doncic playing games this weekend.
Wow.
But this is the postseason. Obviously, this is a Dallas team that is built so much around Doncic. You know, but this calf strain, I'm told, is a little bit more than a mild strain. And so, you know, they're going to keep working on him around the clock. And, you know, the Mavericks have been guarded in talking about his availability. But certainly there's concern. He had that MRI yesterday. You know, and the hope is that he will play in this series, but certainly uncertainty about whether he's able to be on the floor when the series starts game 1 on Saturday.
Well, the Mavs, they open up doing top of the showstop, all right? So showstopper edition, the most athletic dunks of the year since we have Vince Carter here.
Let's
he
do
gets
it.
to judge. First up.
I mean, RJ's here too.
No, that doesn't matter.
Top hang time, Ja Morant.
Oh, for sure.
I mean.
Just.
Windmill off the lob?
Yeah.
Windmill off the lob?
If you can do it, you can do it.
Yeah. Again, this man is what, 6'2"?
Yeah.
6'2"?
When you say if you can do it, you can do it, that means you can do it, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just making sure that we're very clear here.
Oh, no.
All right, let's then go to top opponents. Knicks at Hornets.
Oh, okay.
Obi Toppin, I mean, he put on
Oh,
some.
he did. A little top of the top of Toppin.
Okay. We should do that top of the Toppin. I like that.
Yeah.
Little sloppy top.
Take it to the
my
top.
goodness.
Take what?
Let's
in the
go.
world?
Finish it.
Oh,
Finish it.
we got more windmills. We got more windmills.
Windmills. First
And
of
then
all,
look at
that was our go-to.
That was our go-to. Exactly.
That was our go-to.
That's why they
was
put
the
it on
windmill.
here.
Who did it better, Obi or?
No one does it better than it's him and then Dominic.
That was my thing.
Fine.
Windmills
Top
was the thing.
rotation than it is. Early season Bulls. Lonzo, I mean, he had some pretty passes. Take a look.
That's sick.
Oh, wow.
Hey, who does that remind you of?
360.
Ooh.
Who does that remind you of?
I don't know who he
No one.
He was your point guard.
Who was my point guard? Who was
He was my point guard too.
Jason Kidd?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the dunk.
Oh my gosh. The pass. We're talking about Lonzo.
I
We're talking about Lonzo.
thought you wanted us to say it reminds us of you, and I was like,
No.
enough. All right, I got another one for you. We got show-offs. Let's see.
Showstopper?
Yeah, show-offs.
Ooh.
Show-offs are the showstoppers.
Okay.
Let's take a
Oh,
look.
this is sick.
Yo.
Oh, yeah.
This is sick.
First of all,
That's
not a
a-
lot. He's like 6'11". Not a lot of 6'11"
Exactly.
guys got that.
Well-
And then Toppin, we know what he does.
Yes, he
Obi,
did.
yeah, that's easy.
I mean, he was doing
saw
it
this one.
all season long. This one was pretty good, though.
Pretty good.
Oh,
With somebody,
I like that.
with somebody close
Did you
by.
ever dunk it in?
Oh,
Did you
it
ever
was the
dunk in an
left hand.
NBA game between your legs?
No.
You were scared.
really?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
that
I never dunked
This
in
is
my
the
legs.
one
Not in-
category that you don't. You can't say.
I did the dunk, but I didn't do it in the
These kids
game.
today are
I was worried
wild.
about people running me over.
I mean,
Yeah, they weren't gonna take it too nicely.
Even Zion, like reporter, Jamie Apodi. Jamie, thank you so much for joining us to talk some Sixers. So Simmons for Harden, that deal goes down in February, and back then, fans, they were elated to say the least. But what's the mood now as it pertains to Harden?
You know, I think a lot of the hype has kind of gone away. You're right. That day, it was like magic around here. People couldn't believe it. It was championship or bust. I mean, you're getting James Harden, one of the 75 best players in NBA history, to pair with Joel Embiid. This is a gimme, right? And those first few games, they were magic. But, you know, the love fest has faded a little bit, especially because recently Harden hasn't really quite seemed like the Robin to Embiid's Batman. And especially you look at the series against the Raptors, he's been coming up a little small in some of these games. And near the end of games, when they're a close game, they played each other last week, and Harden only had 13 points. And you know what? He shot 25% from the field. So he can't come up that way in the playoffs here. So I think people are starting to get a little skeptical of this dynamic duo.
So other than having to worry maybe about Harden picking up his game a little bit here, the Sixers as a whole, they have their hands full with a super tough opponent in the Raptors who've been excellent this year. Why do you think this matchup could be particularly troublesome for the 76ers?
Well, of all the matchups they could have gotten, this is the one that nobody wanted for many, many reasons. One, what I just said, Harden hasn't played well against Raptors. In fact, the team hasn't played well. They met each other 4 times this season. The Sixers lost 3 of those games. So that doesn't bode well for a 7-game series, does it? And another reason is the Matisse Thybulle factor. Here's a guy, the best defensive player on the team, and he's a spark. He's got charisma. Fans love him. And he can't travel to Canada because he's not fully vaccinated. So that was a big disappointment to fans. I don't think a lot of people realized that until last week when he wasn't able to play in that game against the Raptors. And then you have just this matchup overall. You know, there's some history between these two teams. I was there back in 2019 when that buzzer beater by Kawhi sent Joel Embiid to the locker room in tears, crying. And so he feels the pressure of winning there in Toronto. And the Sixers as a whole, they have the pressure of getting deep into this playoffs. I mean, they've only gotten out of the second round 2 times since 1986. This would be the second time if they were to actually do it. That's a long time.
Right. And you said it. The word du jour is pressure, right? So what's the feeling among fans when it comes to Doc Rivers' decision-making, and how will that play out in this series?
Well, I think one of the most special things about Philadelphia is they're the best sports fans in the world. And the reason they're the best sports fans in the world is because they're the most knowledgeable sports fans in the world. And they see what's going on here. And they're not big fans of Doc Rivers right now. I think Philadelphia Sixers fans kind of see Rivers as getting in this team's way a bit. So should the Sixers be bounced early, that's going to be Rivers' head for sure. And I feel like sometimes there's even this sentiment that, all right, good, let's have them lose early in this playoff run so that we can get another coach in here. Recently, Rivers has lashed out at the media a little bit, and it seems like he's in over his head. This is a guy he's a phenomenal coach. Harden said he came here for Rivers, but the prevailing notion here in Philadelphia, at least from the fans,